So now we have a new mechanic in the game. We already talked about that a lot. It is the famous Cobra button, or the maneuver mode, right? The basically takes all the limits off of the AOA limiters of fly-by-wires and any other type of safety system, right? But what aircraft have this system? Well, today I'm gonna show to you every single aircraft that have these for all the countries, okay? The first thing that you have to know is that, remember to go to options, air battles, not air battles, I'm sorry, go to controls, and then put a button on switch maneuver and limits mode. It is in caps lock for me, but of course, you know, you do you. So let's start with the US. The first aircraft of the US that has this button is the F-15A. The good old F-15A, the older one. Of course, if you are faster, you cannot use it as well. It is normally used in a lower speed kind of situation, and you can pass out the pilot when pulling. So yeah, as you see, no Cobras or anything like that, but it is able to pull a little bit more. So it is very cool. But just remember, it doesn't do a proper Cobra, it just pulls a little bit more of a nose authority for the F-15A. It becomes lighter in the feeling, kinda, right? So you can actually pull the nose a little bit quicker in a dogfight. But, of course, remember, you are going to lose energy doing this. Of course, another aircraft that has this is the F-15C. The feeling is the same over here, right? The CMSIP2 will be basically the same. No Cobras or anything like that, but it can pull a little bit more AOA, which is it just makes sense, right? So you can see, you can pull a little bit more angle of attack, but no Cobras. And then, of course, we have also the F-15E, which is heavier than the F-15C and A. Although it does have more power, it will be the same feeling. No Cobras, no crazy maneuvers, but in a general sense, you will be able to be a little bit lighter and help in a dogfight for an aircraft that is a little bit heavier and doesn't like too much the dogfight compared to other lighter aircraft, right? So yeah, a lot of AOA, but no Cobras. Another one, obviously, with the new aircraft being added, the F-18 Hornet, in this case, the A model. So, of course, the A model is a little bit lighter, so we will be able to pull a little bit more, as you see, and yeah, it's kind of a Cobra. It's not really like a proper Cobra, like an Su-27 or a Draken or something, but it's there, you know, you can, yeah, it's a Cobra. You can call it a Cobra, right? Of course, you lose a lot of energy while doing this maneuver, so you gotta be careful on the timing that you use it. And just remember, of course, that although this is a lighter version of the F-18, it has a little bit less power than the C model, so it will have less energy retention. Of course, not only the C model has that, the A model, sorry, now the C as well has that as well. So yeah, of course, like I said, it has more thrust. This engine is actually the same, it's the early model, so I don't think you received the upgrade in the engine, but you will get the idea, right? And just remember, this is a heavier aircraft by a little bit, so be careful on flat spins or anything like that, but it can still do your Cobra that you like, okay? Of course, the C late model as well can do it. Again, like I said, it is a bit heavier, but it has more power, this one, and it can do more turns in a general sense for more time, basically, right? So you can do some crazy maneuvers with this. Like, look at this. I mean, almost a super Cobra kind of over here. The one thing that you have to remember is that it loses a lot of energy, and although it can do the Cobra, it takes a little bit more time to recover from it than a Sukhoi, okay? Just be careful to not crash into anything. So these are it for the US, the F-15s, A, C, E, and the F-18s, the A, C late, and C early. F-14s doesn't do that, F-16 as well. Let's go for Germany. For the Germans, we have the MiG-29s. This is the G model. So yeah, it's not capable of doing a Cobra like the F-18. properly. You know, he can do some weird maneuvers that look like a Cobra sometimes, but in a general sense, it will be more close to the F-15 than the F-18. You can see that you can pull a lot of AOA, 40 to 50 degrees even sometimes, but in a general sense, it will not do a proper Cobra, and when you are in a very high AOA kind of situation, the aircraft becomes kind of a brick, very hard to, you know, control, and of course, you gotta use your rudder to control the aircraft because the ailerons just stop working, and the rolling of the aircraft becomes very heavy. So, yeah, you can see kind of a Cobra. It's better than the F-15, but it's more sluggish than the F-18. So for sure, the MiG-29 is much better now with the AOA limiter, but at the same time, it is not the greatest thing ever, and it loses to the F-18. Of course, it's not only the G model that can do it. The normal 912A exported model, you know, for Germany, in the terms on the times actually of the East German Air Force, can also do it. The flight model is pretty much the same. It is basically the same aircraft, but upgraded with other systems. So no proper Cobras, sluggish a little bit, but a lot more AOA than before. It can kind of do a Cobra if you're very slow, as you see. So, like I said, in between the F-15 and the F-18. And of course, the last aircraft of the German Air Force that can do it is the Eurofighter Typhoon. This aircraft is actually one of the best without doing too much of a Cobra, okay? It becomes way lighter and you can pull a lot more AOA and you can do a lot more with this, but at the same time, you're not doing Cobras and backflips and everything with that. So it is like if you're doing like a comparison to the F-18, it turns better than the F-18, it feels like, because it's lighter. Even in the very high AOA, you know, look at this. It's just very light to put the nose where you want. So it's much better than the F-18 on that regard, much better than the F-15 and the MiG-29, especially on that regard. But at the same time, it doesn't do a proper Cobra like the F-18. It kind of becomes uncontrollable sometimes because of that, and it needs to be in a very low speed. So at the end of the day, not really a Cobra doer, you know, but you can do some weird maneuvers with it, and it's one of the best in this situation that it is so light that you can put the nose wherever you want, even if you're not doing the Cobra, even if there are better aircraft that pull a little bit more AOA. It's light enough that it can just do some very, very crazy maneuvers. It basically becomes a very crazy machine to control whenever you put the maneuver on, mode on, right? And that's it for Germany. MiG-29s, the normal and G model, and the Eurofighter Typhoon. We were talking about MiG-29s in the German Air Force. Of course, now with the Russian ones, it is the same. So the 913 over here feels the same as the 912. Obviously, it is heavier a little bit, but it's not by much. So the feeling, it's barely feelable, the difference, you know, so it will basically be the same. A little bit sluggish on the very, very low speeds, high AOA maneuvers. Cannot properly do a Cobra, but it does something similar to it. Still believe it's better than the F-15 to control the aircraft, but it's worse than the F-18 in the Eurofighter. And of course, the SMT became much better because of that, you know, although it is the same, and I gotta be honest, it feels a little bit more sluggish, obviously being a little bit heavier, especially if you have a lot more fuel on it. It has a little bit more drag. In a general sense, it is a worse performing aircraft, and the engine doesn't have more power, so at the end of the day, it feels the same. It can do kind of a Cobra, it has a lot of AOA ability, but it is a little bit sluggish as well. So again, I still believe better than the F-15 in a general sense, but it is still not as good as the F-18 in the Eurofighter. At least the SMT now is a lot more nimble, which is something that was probably the main problem with the SMT. See, I mean, look at this. You have a lot of AOA to be, you know, pulling, and you can do some Cobras. You just have to be very slow to be able to pull them, as you see right there. And then we start off with probably what is the best aircraft to do maneuvers in using this maneuver mode, which are the flankers, of course, right? They are the ones that are the best to do Cobras in. They are the ones that are the best to control in very low speeds, as you see. Of course, they are a very heavy aircraft, but at the same time, you can do crazy, crazy maneuvers. Whenever you want to put your nose in, you can. So, and of course, you can do the most classic Cobra maneuver probably to ever be in an aircraft, right? So the normal Cobra maneuver like this. See, very cool. Of course, the SM is a little bit better in the terms of engine, so it will be a little bit more controllable because you will have more thrust and you can control the speed a little bit better. On the fly model itself, it is going to be pretty much the same. It is going to be able to pull the same maneuvers, the same Cobras and everything. It's just that the energy retention and of course the recovery to get to speed again is a lot safer. It is a lot better just because it has more engine. Of course, it is a much higher BR, much higher, you know, missile performance, everything, but you get the idea, right? So this is the classic Su-27. It just has a little bit more engine so that it can help you recover from the Cobras and everything that you can do. And then we go for the 3 aircraft that probably have the craziest fly models in the game. We start off with the Canards flankers with the Su-34. So this aircraft can pull a lot of AOA, It can do much better than the normal flanker in normal circumstances. If you really want to, you can still use for real control and try to get a Cobit and all the other maneuvers done. But I gotta be honest, it is such a heavy aircraft that right now it is harder to do that. As you see, the Canards do help you have more controllability, especially when you are trying to recover. So it is another basically axis kind of vector there that can make you pull a little bit more, of course, but also to be able to control the aircraft and change directions and everything, right? So it is crazy, but of course it is a heavy aircraft, so it needs the Canards to be able to kind of do the same maneuvers that the normal flankers do. Oh my god, that was close. So you get the idea, right? Of course, here we have one of the, like the second craziest one, which is the Su-33. Of course, way lighter than the Su-34. As you can see, it can pull a little bit easier the way that it can. It still has the Canard, so the controllability is still here. You can still do crazy maneuvers, and I'll have a little bit more of a controllability, as you see, but it is still dangerous, of course, but it's a little bit more vector on the maneuvers that you can do. And of course, probably what is the craziest one to use this maneuvering mode is the Su-30SM, the new aircraft that not only has the Canards, and although it is heavier, the engines have thrust vectoring, meaning that you can have not only the control with the Canards a little bit better in the recovery. Since you have thrust vectoring, you don't need aerodynamic lift basically to create the turns and twists of the aircraft because you just have the thrust, right? So with this and the maneuvering mode, it becomes the craziest flight model in the game. It is a lot heavier than what it was in the dev server, but it still can do the 360s and everything and can still recover very easily. It doesn't need to have speed going to the Canards to actually do the maneuvers, meaning that the thrust vectoring really makes the aircraft be able to do whatever turn it wants to do, right? So it is, like I said, the best flight model in the game for this type of maneuver. Obviously, it is a little bit underpowered because of the weight and everything, but still, it is, I mean, look at this. I don't have speed, but I can control the aircraft and recover and change directions whatever I want. So this is the ability of thrust vectoring together with the maneuvering mode. So these are it for the Russians, the Su-27, the SM, the Su-30SM, the Su-34, Su-33, the MiG-29 913, and the MiG-29 SMT. All of these have the maneuvering mode. So for the British, of course, the Typhoon is, you know, the main aircraft of the British Tech Tree. Of course, it has the maneuvering mode, like we talked about it. It feels the same, obviously, because it is the same aircraft. Amazing, probably one of the best in the game. Still, no Cobras, but it's still one of the best in the game. And then we have the Gripen for the British, the South African Gripen. I gotta be honest, it feels a mix between an F-15 and the Eurofighter. It's an aircraft that is very light and can change directions very quickly with the maneuvering mode. Obviously no Cobras, but it's very limited, like the F-15, you know. It is pulling a little bit more AOA, but it's not doing something crazy like the SUs or even turning as much as the Eurofighter, right? So yeah, it's kind of very kept, if you ask me, compared to other aircraft. So a very normal flight model for the Gripen over here. Doesn't bring anything too crazy to the table. in the terms of maneuvering mode, but it does help with the lightweightness of the nose, which means more nose authority, which means winning dogfights when the situation is bad enough that you need to use this mode. But it doesn't change much from the fly model. So, Typhoon and Gripen are the ones for the British. For the Japanese, we have 3 aircraft that have this. Of course, the Thai Gripen, which feels exactly the same, obviously, than the South African one for the British. Very limited. Of course, the F-15J, which is the exact... It feels the exact same as the F-15C MSIP. You know, a little bit better than the Gripen, maybe. Worse than the Eurofighter, no Cobras, still a little bit sluggish, and lack a little bit of control in the very low airspeeds. And of course, the JM as well is pulling the same. It feels the same. It is the same. So, expect the same. So obviously for the Japanese, F-15J, JM, and the Gripen for Thailand. And for the Chinese, we need to start with the flankers. Of course, we have the J11, the normal one, which is the exact same as the Su-27, the original S variant. Okay, so it's the original normal 1980s variant. It feels the exact same as that. Of course, the J11A feels the same because it is pretty much the same aircraft with just a modernization done to it, some changes to the radar, some changes to other things. So the aircraft itself is the same, so the same amount of maneuvering, heavy, can still pull the Cobra, very light nose depending on the speed. Just very good maneuvering modes. And then of course the J11B, which has the same fly model, but it has a little bit more power, which means it will be basically the same as the Su-27SM, right? It will do the same maneuvers, but at the same time you will be able to do more of them and control the speed more because it has more thrust than the original flankers, okay? But of course the maneuvers themselves are basically the same with the maneuvering mode. And we do have the J10 as well in the Chinese tech tree that can do the maneuvering mode. So it feels kind of the exact same as the Eurofighter, to be honest, with maybe a little bit less nose authority, not by much, but it is how it kind of feels. The aircraft pulls a little bit more AOA, but it's around 30, something like that. If you roll the aircraft as well, you can do Cobra maneuvers, but you get into a flat spin and you will be able to crash. If you're not careful, you're gonna crash if you're not careful. So it can do a lot of AOA, but you gotta be careful a little bit with the rolling, and at the same time you gotta think that it's very light and nimble as well, so it can control it very well, and it can recover way better than the F-15 and MiG-29, for example, in these low airspeed maneuvers, right? So it's a very cool aircraft. I still believe the Eurofighter feels a little bit better, but it's up there. The maneuvering mode of the J10 is one of the best in the game, apart from not being able to do like thrust vectoring stuff like the Su-30SM. It's almost on par with the Eurofighter. Maybe better even. So for the Chinese, it is the J11, the J11A, the J11B, and the J10A. For the Italians, we have the Eurofighter, the Gripen, and the MiG-29. So very much the same as the other aircraft that we already talked about with these types. So the Eurofighter, the Gripen, and the MiG-29 feel the exact same as the other aircraft that we talked about, but Italy has these 3. So again, MiG-29, Gripen, and the Eurofighter. The French have the Rafale, which is pretty good. Actually, it's pretty good because this aircraft was already one of the best dogfighters in the game, if not the best, before the update. Now it can do way more than what it was doing. So the only problem that it actually has is that in the very low speeds, you're just not so low, like 300 to 400, something like that. You're not able to continuing pulling like a thrust vectoring one, like the Su-30, but it's up there. It's almost there because of the canards and the delta wing design and the lightweightness of the aircraft. So it is weirdly better than the Eurofighter, but you gotta be careful at the same time because you can get to kind of a flat spin like I did there, and you ended up crashing. So it is very, very dangerous, but at the same time, it can pull a lot of AOA, and it can kind of, even in the very low airspeeds, kind of do a Cobra like this. So it is kind of a Cobra. Yeah, look at this. At 300, you basically do a Cobra, right? So the Rafale is one of the best aircrafts because if you can control the aircraft, it takes a little bit more skill. But if you can control the aircraft, it is probably the best aircraft apart on this regard, apart from the Su-30, because the Su-30 has the thrust vectoring. But this thing is like I don't know, man. It feels like an UFO. It really does. So the Rafale has one of the best flight models in the game with the maneuvering mode, that you can basically do all the maneuvers that you want, almost. Apart from thrust vectoring maneuvers. Because, to be honest, even if you compare to normal Su-27s, this aircraft can do a little bit more because it is so light. So it can do crazy maneuvers. With the Mika, I mean, and the Magic is very good. So the French, only the Rafale. But it's good enough that it's probably better than anything else, maybe apart from a thrust vectoring Su-30. So for the Swedish, we have at first the Finnish F-18, which is the exact same on its flight model than the American one. So you can do, you know, Cobras and everything. The same good old F-18 that we already had with the American one. And the same flight performance from the Gripen A and C. So no Cobras or anything like that, but, you know, it's lighter. It's better for the Gripen, but compared to the other aircraft, it is one of the worst. It's just a little bit sluggish. Cannot do too much. You know, the Rafale is way better. The Eurofighter is way better. It's still controllable enough that you can do semi-like thrust vectoring maneuvers of the Su-30 SM, but it takes a little bit of skill. It doesn't pull a lot of nose like the Rafale and the Eurofighter, I feel like. And then, of course, the Drakens, the A, the D, and the XS model all have the maneuvering mode, and they can all do the Cobra maneuver. Is it the same as an Su-27? No. But guys, this is a very old aircraft. It can do it well, but it's not the same, like the same, you know. If you roll the aircraft, you can do it even better. So, but this is for all aircraft. If you want to do a more heavy Cobra, even with the flankers, just roll the aircraft while you are pulling, and you're able to do it like more an aggressive pull. But as you see, it is an aircraft that is very sluggish compared to all the other ones, and it's because of the age of the aircraft, more or less, right? So the Draken can do the maneuver, has the maneuvering mode, but it is a limited one compared to the 4th generation ones, which, I mean, was expected, wasn't it? So yeah, you can pull a lot of AOA, but it's less than the other ones, it feels like. Or even though, I mean, it's basically the same as the other ones, the nose feels heavy because it doesn't have the canards, right? Or thrust vectoring or anything like that. See, like, it just feels heavy. The nose doesn't respond too well. But it's an older aircraft, what you should expect. So for the Swedish, we have the Finnish F-18C, the Gripen A, Gripen C, the Draken D, the Draken XS, and the Draken A that it's not here, but yeah, all of them. And of course, the last nation, the Israelis, they only have basically one type of aircraft, so I'm gonna just wrap it up the video to not be too long, but it is the F-15s, okay? The Eagles, the 3 variants that we have here will have the maneuvering mode, the A, the C model, and the E model, right? So the I, the F-15A and C, right? So the Ram, the Bas, and the Bas Meshupar, okay? So all of them will receive, or already have the maneuvering mode. They feel the exact same as the other aircraft, the other F-15s that we talked about. So a little bit more sluggish, not too much control. You can roll the aircraft to try to do kind of a Cobra, but it doesn't do well Cobras or anything like that. It is sluggish, but it is a heavier aircraft. It doesn't have canards, doesn't have thrust vectoring. So of course it will be a little bit more sluggish, right? It just, you know, physics. That's how they work. So again, to wrap up the video, the Bas Meshupar, and F-15I. These 3 are the ones for the Israelis. No F-16s, no Kafir, or anything like that, okay? And basically this is it. All of these nations have one aircraft on the very least that have the maneuvering mode. Use it, but carefully. It can make you win dogfights like nothing else, especially in overshooting targets. Control your airspeed, because if you are fast or too fast, you're not going to be able to use it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Enjoy the maneuvering mode. It is an amazing feature. See you guys on the next one. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and bye guys. See you.